some showers, some convective showers. That means that they're downpours. They've had occasional lightning strikes. No lightning at this point. And as the night progresses, the chance for lightning goes down. But this is important because one of the weather thresholds is that if there's any lightning within 20 miles of the launch pad, they've got to delay it until that passes, and it's got to be gone for at least a half an hour. At this point, here it is, 39B. In the clear, so the weather should not be an issue at this time. That said, we've got a cold front coming through tomorrow. That's going to be the big weather story for us. It's going to feel a lot cooler by the time we get to Thursday. But thankfully, for the sake of this launch between the launch window 104 to 304 a.m., this will hang back and it should pose no problem. But as far as the Artemis weather criteria goes, this is really interesting. There is so much to this. You got to look at the temperatures. Is the temperature going to be warm enough, but not too warm, right? Well, we're a go for that. We're not looking at any freezing temperatures, nothing below about 39 degrees, which is the temperature, which is one of the cutoff temperatures. I think 38 degrees actually, because you can have various freezing issues with relative humidity, at least frost developing. So that's not a problem. It's not too hot. The winds are okay. Can't have winds over about 39 knots, so we're good to go there. There's no rain in the vicinity. They can't launch it through the rain. As I mentioned, there's no lightning. They can't launch it through the lightning as well. And the cloud rules. This is one that is sort of a consideration tonight because previously there had been a 90% chance for a go for this to launch, and then they reduced that chance to an 80% chance weather-wise because we had clouds rolling in. And the clouds can't be thicker than 4,500 feet. Another interesting thing about this is you can't have any like smoke coming up from the ground connecting to a cloud. Sometimes with controlled burns, there's big smoke plumes that connect to cumulus clouds, and because of the electricity that can be translating from the ground to the cloud, they basically don't want to coax a lightning strike. And the last thing they have to do is check the clouds to make sure that they're not connected to distant thunderstorms. It's called convective debris, those high wispy clouds, because they can cause lightning strikes. And then finally, they actually check the voltage within the clouds. They've got a little meter that can see what's going on to determine if there's any electrification of those clouds to see if they hold a charge that goes beyond the thresholds, because as this rocket launches, it becomes a big channel. And of course, for Florida, that's like one of the major concerns is lightning. You don't want to have lightning striking this thing as it goes up because that can mess with it. And finally, solar activity. We're a check for that. If you have any kind of geomagnetic storms or high intensity electromagnetic radiation, that can interrupt communications with a rocket and make it so, like the gentleman was saying there on the Cape, if they have to do any self-destruct sequences, if this is going the wrong direction, they got to be able to communicate with it and obviously tell it where to go and when to do various burns. So yeah, Christy, we are good to go for temps, winds, rain, lightning, clouds, and solar activity. So it's just a matter of working the bugs out of the system to let this candle fly.
All right, Brooks, thank you. Yeah, a lot of things that have to go right to make this all happen. So fingers crossed that everything on the other end is going well as well. So hundreds of people have traveled from all over the place to come witness history along the Space Coast. And Fox 25's Marie Ettinger is joining us live from Titusville, where a crowd of people have been out there waiting for this to happen. Marie, what's the mood like right now?
So the mood is finally energized. When I checked back in with you guys a little bit ago, I was mentioning that people seemed like a little bit deflated, but that seems to have improved quite a bit. So I want to show you behind me just how crowded this place has gotten. There have been people trickling in constantly throughout the night, and you can just see so many people in chairs, so many people standing. This place is packed. So one of the people here is Soshi. She is 8 years old. This is, of course, going to be her first rocket launch. So, well, the first one successful. The first successful one, hopefully. So you were here last time. What was that like?
The rocket launch didn't go, and it was like so boring because nothing happened, just the rocket standing there and they were trying to work it out. But I got to go on the bridge and got to see it up close with binoculars.
So that's still pretty cool. And how's tonight been? Hopefully not quite as boring.
Yeah.
And what are you looking forward to tonight?
I hope that it goes up.
Us too. Would you mind showing off your shirt? I brought up that they were selling these shirts earlier. Pretty cool. What do you think of them?
Good.
Pretty good. And your dad's here too. What's it like being with him tonight? Not sure. Some good bonding time maybe. Well, Sochi, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you for talking with us. I'll check back in with you in a little bit. I also want to introduce you guys to this crowd of men standing by just to talk to you, our Fox 35 viewers. So what's it like being out here? You guys mentioned you've got class in the morning. You're here anyway.
Yes, ma'am. We're Embry-Riddle students, so, you know, it's a technically a Wednesday morning, so we're getting ready bright and early for class tomorrow, but I'm excited for the launch.
We all got our degrees, right? Pilot's right here.
Yeah,
He's gonna be
our pilots. He's
and I'm going to be building the rockets
engineer.
here. So it's
You're going to be
fun.
building these
Yes.
rockets? You're
Yep.
going to be working for NASA, for Lockheed Martin?
That's the
What do
goal.
you
NASA. That's the goal.
do? Okay.
But,
doing what specifically?
Rocket propulsion. So the engines on the rocket.
So this is just like the test run for you. You're getting ready.
I'm just learning, right? This is super cool to me.
What about you guys over here? What's it like being out here?
Him and I are both pilots. So.
We're gonna be pilots.
For regular aircraft,
Yeah.
not for
Hopefully for one of these, but you know,
one day.
hopefully one day if they'll have us.
It's all our first rocket launch, so we're all super excited.
Yeah.
We came to the first Artemis one that got canceled in October. Him and I came down at least. So we're hoping this one goes.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from so many people. Like, they were here last time and they are just dedicated enough that they're coming back the second time around. So I'll come over to you because now that you're available to talk, and you've got this cool NASA shirt. That shirt rocks.
Yeah, we'll go.
Yeah, he's ready. Yeah, what's it like being out here for round 2?
I'm also a student, so I'm very excited for the launch. Hopefully in the future be building rockets, so very excited.
Totally. Well, thank you guys so much for talking.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Of course. I also want to show you guys baby Elora making her first debut on television. This is my cousin Lauren. She lives in Titusville, actually. And so you're here tonight. What made you decide to come out?
My cousin was here, and I've been watching the launches since I was a kid. We would go out, you know, our elementary school, I went to Tropical, so we would just go outside the classrooms and watch launches go off, and this is supposed to be a big one.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier, is like growing up here, you see them. We saw one last week that was pretty cool. I mean, they're always really cool, but
Launches are the best.
yeah.
Night
and this
launches,
one,
yeah.
This is the one.
It's gonna like shake windows, I think.
Yeah, you were talking about like you're a little concerned for your house.
Slightly, yes.
How do you think Elora will fare?
I'm gonna cover her ears, and she likes noise, so we'll see. She also likes light, so
It's perfect for her.
it's perfect.
It is.
I'm excited.
Me too. Well, thanks for talking with us, Lauren. Thanks for talking with us, Elora.
She's lost interest.
She's lost interest, but she's going to get things going pretty quickly. And hopefully here it's going to be picking up pretty soon. We actually saw some people turn off lights just a bit ago, I think, in preparation for the launch. We'll check back in with you guys in just a bit to show you just how crowded things are out here. We'll talk to more people, lots of interesting stories to tell. So we're excited to bring you all of those stories.
Elora, what a sweet babe she is, Marie. Maybe a future astronaut. She's in the right place for that, as well as those very ambitious students you talk to as well.
Oh yeah, it is a good crowd. Lots of interesting people out here. It's been so fun getting to meet everyone. Just because it's such a good energy, everyone's so excited, especially as the actual launch time gets closer. It's just been wonderful.
All right, Marie, thank you. We'll check back in with you in a little bit. Well, Fox's Caroline Elliott is also in Brevard County, ready to witness Artemis blast off, and she joins us now live from Kennedy Space Center. Caroline?
Hey there, Christy. Obviously, we're just tracking the latest with everything happening with Artemis 1. Now, we know that leak that happened earlier tonight, that has now been resolved in the last hour, but now they're focusing on an Ethernet issue. Now, we talked with NASA Administrator Bill Nelson earlier today in the parking lot about some of these issues, and we asked him if he felt confident that this could be fixed tonight. He simply shrugged his shoulders and said, hey, we're putting confidence in this team and we won't launch until it's right. Now, again, for more background for all our viewers, this is the third official attempt overall and the first try after Hurricane Nicole caused some damage last week. We know that NASA met yesterday to talk a little bit about if Artemis 1 was ready to launch today. They came to the agreement that this rocket was in fact ready to launch, but of course we're just getting some issues now.
All right, Caroline, thank you. The launch window, as we knew it, was 1:05. We did just get a tweet from NASA's Exploration Ground System. It says the upper stage liquid hydrogen is now topping. The range safety officer is testing the flight termination system, and the launch team is determining our new launch time. So that is the latest from NASA's Exploration Ground System. So we will keep updating that and let you know as we get closer to that launch window. And also, as we take a closer look at this mission, no astronauts will be inside the capsule this time. Instead, there will be 3 mannequins. They will pave the way for humans to fly on future missions to the moon and also to Mars. The mannequins will provide data on what crews may experience during that long flight. NASA will use that information to make improvements for the crewed mission. And it's not just mannequins on board when the Artemis 1 mission does blast off. Snoopy will be floating around the capsule too. The stuffed animal will be the zero gravity indicator. Snoopy played the role in the Apollo era as well. In May of 1969, the Apollo 10 astronauts went to the moon to check it out before the lunar landing attempt. Now, the mission required the lunar module to skim the moon's surface and snoop around, and the Apollo 11 landing site, leading to the crew to name the lunar module Snoopy. And going to the moon safely, it does not come cheap. So listen to this. The Artemis project was originally budgeted at $10 billion between development costs, budget issues, and also design changes. The entire program will cost NASA $93 billion by the time the astronauts are back on the moon. In addition to the program's costs, each Artemis launch will have a price tag of more than $4 billion. And also, here's a little bit of history for you. The first mission to bring humans to the moon was Apollo. So in Greek mythology, Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo. But as far as space programs go, Artemis couldn't be more different than its predecessor. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson touched on that topic this week. He says when you look at Apollo, it took 3 missions for them to accomplish what they're currently trying to do with Artemis 1.
So it's really a compression of a lot of the things, and we're standing on the shoulders of those who had been there before, but with a completely different vehicle.
Well, Apollo 11 landed American astronauts on the moon for the first time. That is the goal of Artemis 3. And here's a timeline for Artemis 2 and 3 if Artemis 1 goes up today or soon at least. Artemis 2 will happen no earlier than 2024, and Artemis 3, the one that will bring humans back to the moon, is slated for 2025. But NASA's Inspector General says that launch could be pushed back to 2026. NASA says that mission will land the first female astronaut and the first astronaut of color on the moon, and that will be the U.S. Space Agency's first crewed moon landing mission since Apollo 17 in 1972. So it's been a long, long time.
Amazing.
And something, of course, that has to play out for all of this is the weather. And ironically, Brooks, of course, the weather, it plays a really big part, and a lot of times it is the problem in these situations. But ironically, right now, that's not the issue that's holding things up.
Right. The weather looks to be pretty good for this launch right now. We've got about an 80% chance. One thing holding it back would be the amount of clouds in the sky, and we've got a front approaching from the west. And so the rule of thumb with a situation like this is that the clouds can't be thicker than about 4,500 feet. And the reason is that you can start to pull some electric charge, especially with those solid boosters rolling up through the clouds, creating a trail of solid clouds. You see the kerosene they burn on the SpaceX ones and the methane and also the hydrogen burns a lot cleaner. You don't have that smoke trail, but the solid boosters leave a long smoke trail, and that can produce a channel for lightning. So that's one of the considerations, and that would be about the only limiting factor. The winds right now are just perfect. Calm winds at the Titusville location, and the winds are blowing out of the southwest about 5 to 6 miles an hour at most right now at the Cape. And on the top of this thing, over 200 feet, it may be blowing about 10 to 15 miles an hour, but that's well below the thresholds. Also, things are dry right now on Cape Canaveral. No issues with rain around the region, but we are in the vicinity of some rain. Thankfully, it's on the other side of the peninsula. It's over the Tampa Bay region. This is Pinellas County, and also a string of showers, all associated with a front coming through tomorrow, a significant cold front. Florida today reaching the middle 80s. Tomorrow, the last warm day, up around 80 before the front comes through. But out ahead of it, we're going to catch some of these showers in Orlando tomorrow morning around about daybreak through midday. But yeah, the rain right now is about 135, 136 miles away. So no problems there. And there's no lightning. Our lightning strikes are at 0. Earlier, we did have some lightning strikes, but that has since passed, and I'm not expecting any overnight. But the threshold with that is you can't have lightning within 20 miles of the launch pad. Here it is, 39B, right here off the Cape. There's Playa Linda Beach, 39B, historic 39B. Just so cool to see all of this. There's the vehicle assembly building. There's the NASA shuttle landing strip, which recently the X-37 secret space plane landed on. Remember the sonic booms unexpectedly this weekend? That was a big hush-hush. Thankfully, this one is very public, as it should be, because it's going to be very bright and also very loud. It's a big one. But yeah, this cold front's moving through tomorrow, and that's going to change everything in our weather pattern. Thankfully, though, it holds off during the launch window, which begins at 1:04, and that's coming up pretty soon here at 12:54 a.m., and it ends at 3:04. So they're giving it an 80% chance for a go. So a lot of folks ask, what does that mean weather-wise, an 80% chance for a go? Well, it's a very complex thing, and there's a lot of elements to go down. We've got to make sure the temperatures are in check, which they are. Can't be too cold, and it can't be too hot. And remember, the temperatures were a big factor if you go back to the Challenger disaster, where the O-rings basically froze and they changed shape, and it allowed some issues there to happen. So they don't want the temperatures to be too low, because it can change the width of various components like rubber components and this and that. The winds can't be too high. If it's over about 45 miles an hour at the top of this thing, that could change its vector as far as its launch pattern goes. They don't want rain. They don't want to launch this thing through rain for obvious friction reasons and possible lightning reasons. Clearly, if there's lightning in the vicinity, it's a no-go. And the clouds, I mentioned it, the clouds, it's actually a complex one with the clouds. It can't be thicker than 4,500 feet, but also if the clouds above the Artemis are from a distant thunderstorm, those high wispy cirrus clouds, those are called convective debris clouds, and the anvil cloud tops, they can all carry a charge. You can get that crawling spider lightning you see sometimes in the summertime. So if you have any of that in the vicinity, you can't launch, and you got to wait 30 minutes until the last lightning strike within that 20 miles. Finally, solar activity is a big consideration, because if there's a geomagnetic storm or a solar flare or any kind of coronal mass ejection, well, that could very, very much interrupt not just communications with Artemis or any rocket for that matter, but also the complex electronics. It would fry the motherboard and lead to a rocket possibly going astray. So there's a lot of safety checks that have to be in range. And all that said, Christy, we were talking about this earlier. You got to make sure everything is just right on the range itself. You can't have airplanes flying through the area. Often private pilots will try and catch a glimpse and they get a little bit too close. You can't have boats out there. A lot of private boat owners will journey out and try and catch a closer view, and if they're within the range, they have to call a pause on that, and we saw that often with the Falcon 9. A final consideration for tonight is that we've been looking at, and you can see it here on the right-hand part of your screen, you see the venting going on. That happens with the liquid oxygen. It boils off in this atmosphere. So they have to keep topping it off. And oxygen's a bigger molecule, but we're talking about the hydrogen issue before. And this is a fascinating one. This is one that's led to the delays with Artemis over the last several launches. Hydrogen is the smallest atom in the universe. It's so tiny that it will escape as a gas the tiniest little gap. If there's a valve seal, for instance, it could be a microscopic gap that's just a hair bigger than the hydrogen atom, and you get a leak, and that can change the pressures. And that's what they were dealing with tonight. They had to tighten that thing, probably not with a ratchet, but something similar. And that's what they had to deal with the last two launches prior with the wet dress rehearsals. And a lot of folks are saying, well, why are you guys using hydrogen? But it's one of those things. Believe it or not, it goes back to when Congress mandated the Space Launch System program. They wanted to, I'm guessing for budgetary concerns, use parts of the space shuttle system to create the Space Launch System. So in doing that, they used components that used hydrogen instead of the larger, more viscous molecules of kerosene and methane, which SpaceX uses right now for their rockets to get around that hydrogen problem. So there's a little bit of a sort of an old technology, but at the same time, hydrogen's an excellent fuel, and you can make hydrogen pretty easily with water. And so the goal ultimately with part of the moon exploration is that they found some frozen water in those craters down there on the moon, on the poles. And also on Mars, they're suspecting there could be some water there. And so if you can exploit that frozen water, well, then you could make fuel on planet or on moon, and that gives you a lot more options for the moon being a base for future Mars explorations, or obviously for solar system travel. So yeah, Christy, one day maybe we'll talk about interstellar travel, but I think we're going to need something a little more sophisticated than hydrocarbon engines. We're going to need some kind of a warp core, but we'll leave that up to the Star Trek group out there. So that said, Christy, you know, we're crossing fingers. We're only a few minutes away. It's now 12:59 a.m. The launch window opens at 1:04. I know they had that planned 10-minute hold, but here we are. We've got 4 minutes and 47 seconds before the first steps to humanity's return to the moon.
All right, Brooks, thank you so much. A lot of knowledge and a lot of information you just gave us, so we appreciate it very much. And as Brooks just said, we are just a couple of minutes away from the beginning of that launch window. We want to check back in with Fox 35's Alina Shiraji. She is at the Kennedy Space Center right now. Alina, what are the updates that you're hearing?
Well, we're finishing the tanking process right now, and right now the launch director is trying to find a new time to hopefully launch this rocket to the moon. We have been waiting for a little bit of time. They were trying to fix an Ethernet cable, and then they successfully fixed a leak. There was the red team, which is a group of trained engineers that were inside of that compartment where the leak is actually happening. But if you take a look over my left shoulder right now to launch pad 39B, you can see that rocket just lighting up the sky. We are really in the home stretch right now. The 2-hour window just opened up. So we're waiting to see if the third time is going to be the charm here for NASA. And on top of all of this, we've had 2 hurricanes about a month apart. And we also know that the rocket sustained some minor damage from NASA, leaving it out there on the launch pad. So again, we're waiting to see how all of these variables play out. Just a little while ago, we spoke with NASA's administrator, former Senator Bill Nelson. He told us basically it comes down to this: it's rocket science. So everything has to go 100% according to plan, and even the smallest sort of bump in the road can throw off an entire mission. So as you can see, we're waiting to see all of these variables play out. We're hoping that today will finally launch. We have been here for now, this is our 3rd time, so I think everyone on the ground here is just waiting to see the word and what this new launch time will be. Again, 1:04 in the morning was supposed to be when this rocket and capsule combo was supposed to take off. We are slipping back. It does not look like we are going to be making that mark. I'll send it back to you guys for now till the next update.
All right, Alina, thank you. And as Alina just said, she has been covering this for months, so we will check back in with her in a little bit for updates on the situation. And Fox 35's Marie Ettinger has been busy. She's been checking with folks who drove into campouts at the coast and watch history in the making. She spoke with students visiting from flight school who drove up from Daytona.
We came out, this is our 3rd time, so hopefully tonight will be the night.
The 3rd time for Artemis?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's exciting that it's at night. I hear it's even more fantastic to see something like this at night, so we're excited.
Excited enough to potentially stay up till 3 in the morning?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We left home. We live in Apollo Beach, and we left home at 4? No, not even 4, 3:30. Yeah. We thought, we want to make sure we could get the parking and everything. So.
How far is that?
Was it 2.5?
18 miles or something.
We're about 20 minutes out of Tampa.
So. Okay. I mean, that's still a trek.
Yeah.
Right.
It's worth it. It's on our bucket list,
I was going to ask, what keeps you coming back?
Well, the thing I've found is that you find your passion, you find your crew, your gang of people, because people here, they love the spaceships, and there's so many of them have dogs. We always enjoy talking to people. It's just very pleasant,
This is Roxy.
Roxy here to see a rocket.
Yeah,
Yes.
Of course.
How'd you pick the light up collar?
She saw it somewhere, probably on Amazon.
For safety,
So it's...
And she's got her own little cart and everything.
Yeah, of course.
What do you have to say? So excited. Is she going to be all right when it takes off, do you think?
I think so. Otherwise, I'll just cover her ears and we'll be fine.
She seems pretty excited.
Yes, she is.
All right, that was Marie Ettinger. She's been talking to people in Titusville who are out there and waiting for the rocket to hopefully launch. I want to share an update that we just got from Twitter. Brooks, this says NASA's Exploration Ground Systems just tweeted, "We are now in replenish mode on upper stage for both liquid hydrogen and also liquid oxygen. We remain in a hold."
Okay,
so
again,
they're topping
it off. They're topping off the tank.
Yeah, so who knows?
Yeah.
We're not
So we're
experts, so we don't know how long that will take.
No.
But the window is, again, it's about to start in just about right now, I guess it's about 104. So
yeah, this is the launch window beginning, and it's a window that lasts till 3:04. So while we're in this 10-minute hold, if they start counting down again in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that'll reduce the overall window for the options. And of course, if we get past a point of that launch window, they're going to have to scrub it for another day. But hey, they're topping off the tanks, which is a good sign, and they've fixed the Ethernet issue, they fixed the leaky hydrogen issue, so all the ducks are in a row. I think they're motivated, and it looks like at least the weather is going to cooperate.
And the weather in a row too, which is great.
Yeah, you know, one of the key things is to look at the clouds on a night like this, and we've got an approaching cold front. The clouds, thankfully, look like they will cooperate. This is the future cast for our launch forecast with clouds and radar. It begins now, and it continues right through the end of the launch window. And overall, we're looking at some broken clouds, times of mostly cloudy skies. You might see some stars through the clouds, but the big thing to watch for is lightning in the vicinity of the launch pad, as well as clouds that could produce lightning if they haven't yet. And fortunately, none of those are a problem at this point. The clouds cannot be thicker than about 4,500 feet in the column from which this launches, because that is the sort of the agreed upon threshold that you could start to see some charge in the clouds, and there is no lightning anywhere in the vicinity. So we're cautiously optimistic that at least the weather will hold. They're giving it an 80% chance for a go weather-wise. Another thing to check on is the wind, and thankfully, well, we've got a southwest wind about 3 to 5 miles an hour. No problem at all. Unfortunately, with all the rain we've had, for folks outside watching this thing, I have a hinkering, a guess that they're probably swatting mosquitoes. You know, it's not windy enough to get those mosquitoes out of here. Yeah, we've got a cold front coming our way. See how the winds pick up here over the Gulf? That would be the kind of wind that could brush them away. So folks there patiently waiting are also risking their life and limb with those mosquitoes, that's for sure. That said, kidding aside, we've got this front coming through tomorrow, and it's going to be the last warm day tomorrow, but thankfully the front holds back beyond our launch window, so we don't have to worry about anything like that. There's no storms in the cards from that front moving through. However, we could see some rain tomorrow morning well after the launch window, like around 9 o'clock in the morning. So 80% chance that this is going to be a go. Yeah, the launch window opened at 1:04. It goes till 3:04. So right now we're sitting at about 1:06 a.m. And weather at least should not be a problem. We've been dealing with a lot of things tonight. There was an Ethernet switch issue, stuff that you think about at your house. You're like, oh man, the internet's down. You know, unplug it, plug it back in, rattle the cables, see if it works. I'm sure it's a little more complex than that, but those are the kind of troubleshooting issues they've been facing. And they're also looking at these pesky hydrogen leaks, which fortunately they say they fixed. They sent in their red team, which was always a risk, right, when you have a fully fueled rocket like the SLS, or even if you go back to the shuttle days. I remember an astronaut came to speak at our school when I was in elementary school, and he equated the space shuttle, which a lot of the components are here with the space launch system. He equated it as launching on almost a nuke. I mean, this thing's got so much power, and so you don't want to create any sparks when you're looking at hydrogen, especially leaking hydrogen. So they had to go in there, take that risk, make the fix, and it looks like they did. The problem with hydrogen is that it's a really tiny molecule, smallest molecule in the universe, and so it can exploit any little issue. If there's a little crack or a little bit of a seal, in this case the seal wasn't fully sealed on an atomic level, it'll escape. I mean, if you think about a water molecule, you know how leaky water can be. If recently with Ian and Nicole, the two hurricanes, if you had any kind of water trying to get in your house, you put the sandbags in, any little leak, the water comes in. Well, that's a molecule that is hundreds and hundreds of times larger than the hydrogen molecule. So I mean, we're talking about absolute rocket science trying to contain that. And the reason they're using hydrogen is because, well, they're using parts from the space shuttle with the space launch system, and the space shuttle used hydrogen. And it's a convenient molecule to use. It's very plentiful around the universe. Helium is only the more abundant atom around the universe, so it's good to do. And you can make hydrogen from water if you find water or ice on other planets or on moons. So that's an appeal for sure, but it is difficult to work with. So the other things we got to look at are temperatures. If it's too cold, and depending on the humidity levels, they'd have to scrub it, because if you go back to the Challenger days, there were some O-rings on a freezing morning, 1 January, that unfortunately had contracted in the cold and led to some issues there with leaks, and that tragedy occurred. So they got to be really careful with the temperatures. Also, it can't be too hot. The 90s, the mid 90s, that's the upper threshold. The winds can't blow over 40 miles an hour, 44 miles an hour to be exact. It's about 39 knots. And there can't be any rain in the vicinity. There can't be any lightning. There can't be any thick clouds. And also with the clouds, you got to make sure there's no thunderstorms in the vicinity. Even if there's a distant storm over in Tampa, the high cloud tops can start clear across the state and unfortunately add an electricity, a voltage, if you will, about 30 to 40,000 feet up. And as the Artemis flies through that, there'd be a potential that it could coax a lightning strike, even if there was otherwise not a possibility of lightning. Essentially, it creates a circuit from the ground to the cloud, helping to allow the electrons that gather on the ground naturally to connect with those